Hi and welcome to this session on communicating with other applications in the real world. Thanks for joining in this massive amount. I'm going to talk a little bit about communicating with different applications, and specifically I'm going to present a use case at one of our clients where we integrated Drupal in their existing environment. So first, a small thing about me. I'm nlamot. I'm a Drupal developer at Capgemini for 2 years now. I worked on different projects in retail and logistics, and on different projects on web shops and also customer portals. And before that, I studied here at Ghent University, so it's nice to come back. My interests are mainly Drupal development and specifically in software architecture, and in a broader sense in integrating different applications and see how they interact actually. So let's go to the use case. My use case on the Belgian utilities company is one where we integrated with an existing SAP environment and an existing Active Directory that controlled the network. So the customer needed an integrated B2B portal for their partners. They needed SSO and as little as maintenance as possible. So actually they just want to control everything that's in Drupal from the SAP and the AD server. So they came to us and they asked us, can you implement it without a restriction to a technology or whatever? Hi. And we told them we can do this, and we can do this with Drupal. Why did we choose Drupal? First of all, the standards, its flexibility, its scalability, but also because it's more than a content management platform. You can do a lot more with its rich contributed modules and ecosystem. And in this way, we could do it quite fast, actually, the project. And this was, of course, good for our customer. So, first of all, I'm going to explain to you what we mean by an integrated B2B portal, because it's a fancy word, but it can mean anything. So we want to provide a way to the users, to the partners of our client, to subscribe to different contracts. They have to be able to place some orders and see orders they placed. They have to see their invoices, communicate with a service desk that actually is implemented in SAP. So again, with the communication. And a small part of content management where some news flashes would be added and some catalogs, but nothing too fancy in that. And of course, otherwise I wasn't presenting here, an integrated part with these three. For those of you who don't know SAP, SAP is an enterprise resource planning system. It's one of the biggest out there, and it's used by larger to very big corporations to manage all their business processes in a good way. So besides SAP, we have Active Directory, and in this presentation I'm just going to focus on the user management part of Active Directory because it's the only part we integrated with our Drupal. Our Drupal site itself is hosted on Acquia. The other two are on site, on premise at the client. Now, how do they communicate with each other? We use SAML for the communication between Active Directory and Drupal, and we use two technologies for the communication between SAP and Drupal. From SAP to Drupal we go with SOAP, and from Drupal to SAP it's OData. A lot of acronyms, but I'm going to explain them later on in the session. So, first of all, the major part actually is the integration of Active Directory with Drupal using SAML. It was the most difficult one of the three. So when we look at Microsoft Active Directory, Microsoft is comparing it with a dictionary, with a yellow pages for your network. So when you have a larger network, you need a way to manage it. And this is where Active Directory comes into play. So it knows everything about all computers, all printers, and every hardware in the network, but also about every user and every user group, and much more actually. But as I said, for now we're just going to focus on the user part. So what we actually want to do is, we don't want to manage any user in Drupal. We want to populate all users by just logging into our ADFS and then coming back to Drupal when the users are created. How do we do this? There is a service called Microsoft Active Directory Federation Services. It's a service running on top of Active Directory, and it's used to set up a trust relationship between our Active Directory, containing the users, and our service provider, in this case Drupal. And it provides a secure way of sharing identity information between these two trusted business partners. Now we have the two services, Drupal and Active Directory FS, but we have a way to communicate between them, and that's where SAML comes into play. SAML is the security assertion markup language, and it's just a protocol to communicate between those two, and it also allows to provide single sign-on, and this was one of the requirements for this project. A last theoretical slide on this. I talked about identity provider and service provider. How do they connect and what are they? So we have first the service provider, and the service provider is the endpoint for the user who will use the application. So our user goes to Drupal, our service provider, and he provides a service, but he wants to have information about the user that wants to use it. So in this case, he will ask an identity assertion from our identity provider. Our identity provider being Active Directory. So he sends a request, he redirects actually the user to the ADFS, where he will be asked for his identity. He has to provide a username and a password. He logs in, and then the ADFS will get some data about the user, his email, his phone number, and whatever we want in Drupal, and he will send it back to Drupal. And when this is done, Drupal will then use this information to decide this user can see this page and this user can see this page. So it's like that. But now let's go for a demo, because this is just some theory. So I created a small environment on Acquia. Everything I'm going to show you is possible for free, so if you want to try it at home some way, you can do that. So I'm on my site and I want to log in. I click on Federate to log in, and I come here at my ADFS login page. As you can see, it's kind of the Microsoft style. So now I'm going to log in. I'm going to copy my username from my cheat sheet. And I log in. I'm redirected back to Drupal, and now I'm logged in into Drupal. When I see in my account, I'm just member for 7 seconds, so I'm not fooling you or anything. The user is now populated using the identity we got from ADFS. Now, how did we implement this in Drupal? And my slides are back, so I'm going this. How did we do this? We used one library, and this library is Simple SAML PHP. It's a very rich library that's also actively maintained by people who react when you ask them something, so it's a great library. And on top of that, there is a Drupal module available for this library that allows us to integrate it with the Drupal user system without using any custom code. So yeah, this was the best way in our opinion to do it. I'm not going to bore you with the installation of the Simple SAML PHP library and of the module. It depends on the system you're installing it on. but for Acquia you can click on the link if you see the PDF to see how you do it. But what we are going to do here is we are going to configure SimpleSAML PHP to communicate with ADFS, and we're going to do the other way around. So we're going to communicate ADFS to communicate with SimpleSAML PHP. And in this way we are creating a trust between these two parties. After we did that, we can configure Drupal to authenticate and using the library we use. So first of all, configuring SimpleSAML to communicate with ADFS. We need to get the federation metadata, and this is actually a lot of metadata of the ADFS. So we need a certificate in which we have to encrypt our communication. We need to know which parameters we can get, so which claims, it's called in ADFS, we can get from it. These can be email addresses and phone numbers and so on. And then we'll do the two steps beneath, so I'm going to do that now. So it's always the same URL you have to contact, and you can see, so I'm going to this. And then you get an XML with a lot of data. You can see we get, if you can read it, probably not, but we get a certificate, we get all those claims with the name, the role, the group, anything that's available to ADFS, we can get it. And then, yeah, a list of endpoints and so on. So this information, our SimpleSAML PHP library can't use it directly. We have to pre-process it, and that's our second step. So what we're going to do is we're going to a console that SimpleSAML provides to us. And it's right here, if I'm not mistaken. And with this, we can actually parse the XML we had, and then we can generate a configuration array, a PHP configuration array that can be used in a configuration file. So I already did this, of course. So when we go and check it, we have a configuration array with all this parsed into a nice structure that SimpleSAML can use. And finally, we have to have a way to identify our authentication source, and this is where we're going to configure it. So we need to go to the offsources.php file, and we have to add our identity, our ID for this communication, an endpoint for this IDP, and then some parameters we can configure, and most importantly, a private key and a certificate. These are two things we generated ourselves, and it's actually for the communication the other way around. So ADFS will use this certificate to communicate with us, and we will then decrypt that with our private key that we also generated. Next, we do it the other way around. We go from ADFS to SimpleSAML PHP. This is why we needed this off-source file in the beginning. We also have the XML we had for the ADFS. We also have it for our own library, so we can just download it from the URL I provided here. And then we can give it to ADFS, where we will add a relying party trust, and we add the claims. The relying party trust is actually just saying, okay, from now on, we as an AD trust Drupal as a service provider. But we're Drupal developers, so we're not going to do this. We're going to just pass it through an admin, and he will do it for us. Now, as I said earlier, before this presentation to a couple of you, I had some problems while configuring this. And so it's really important that you configure these claims right, because you won't get any information on what's going wrong if you don't. So be careful that you actually add the claims, that you have a unique identifier available in each person, and this actually is instantiated in this person. And when you want to provide Drupal roles from ADFS, you have to add some custom claims in order to provide them to us. We now configured both parties, and now we just have to configure Drupal to go by our simple SAML PHP library. So as you can see, at the moment, I can't access any admin rights. So it's a great way now to check how are we going to add admin roles to my user. We're going to do it in AD. So this is an Azure that's running right now with ADFS configured. And I'm going to my user. I can see here member of, and here I can add myself to a group. So I will add a group. And it's at website administrators. So I'm added to the group now. So now I'm going back to my Drupal. I'm going to log out. Going to log back in. And now I have my admin rights I needed. A simple way just to show you every role can be configured in AD, and we can use it in Drupal now. Now, let's see how we configure this. And here we have the part that's interesting. We can map the name we got from AD on a name in Drupal. We can map a unique identifier. We can map a user email address, and then we can populate our role based on these roles right here. And that's all configuration that is needed to do this. So that was the part about Active Directory and Drupal. Now let's see how we can communicate between SAP and Drupal. The first way from SAP to Drupal is done by SOAP. We do this because we have, first of all, we used it for asynchronous requests. It's also backend to backend communication, and we are just contacting Drupal from SAP, and SAP is just it's a guideline from SAP to use SOAP for that. So you're kind of obligated to use SOAP in this case. We use this for example, synchronizing our service agreements that are available in Drupal, or for synchronizing cost centers, stuff like that. So really batch processes that can happen overnight actually, and are just pushed to us. So SOAP, it's the Simple Object Access Protocol, or just SOAP. It's a protocol, again, for structured information exchange in the web, in web services. And it's used, for example, in SAML. So what you saw right back there, the XML I showed you, that's actually, I didn't show you, I'm sorry, but assertions you get from SAML are SOAP. The structure is, we have an envelope that contains a header and a body, and in this body you can place everything you want. Now, let's go again to show what we can do. We have our site and we have a couple of nodes on it, and you can see them right here. And I implemented two things. First of all, I want to obtain a node by this web service. So I just want to get the Drupal node right here with the SOAP client. Secondly, I have implemented a custom functionality, so a custom function that I can remotely trigger with my SOAP client. The first one, obtaining the node. I use SOAP UI, it's a simple SOAP client, but it's emulating SAP right now. We provide the node ID of the node we want to get. We run the request, and here we see in our response we get all attributes of the node we wanted. And then secondly, a little bit more challenging to implement was the custom functionality we want to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to import an article on the Drupal camp site from my colleague Levi session and import it in our Drupal site. So you see it here, we have the link, and when we look at it right here, you see what we're going to import. Now I run it, I got back my node ID, and when I refresh, the session is imported in our system, and you can see it's really there. I just did it in plain text, but just you get ID. How did we do it? Again, we don't need any custom code for setting this up, and we just need some custom code to add extra functions if we want to. So we use the services module. Probably everyone knows this module. It's a way to build APIs unaware of the protocol that will be used. So we use SOAP, but if we add a REST server, we can use the same functions over REST. Out of the box, it also provides a lot of ways to access nodes, taxonomy terms, stuff like that. And it's extendable. We can add our own functions to it with one simple hook. Then, to provide a SOAP service, we have to have a SOAP server. And for this, we use a SOAP server module. It's not used that much, but it works and is appropriate for our goal. Now, before we go through, we have to think about security, and that's also what's said on this SOAP server modules page. We have to secure our web services, and we do this first of all by just shielding them off with basic authentication. You can use the services basic authentication module for this. But secondly, we also use, of course, HTTPS, so transport layer security, and you can use WS security. And probably the last one is a little bit less familiar. This is an extension to SOAP in which you can add security to your messages without restricting yourself to a certain transport protocol. Because when you use transport layer security, you're obliged to use HTTP. Now, with WS security, we can do the same over SMTP, HTTP, so it's more widespread. You can do more things with it. And again, this WS security is also used in SAML to encrypt our data and to sign our data. How did I implement this custom service? It's just one hook. We have to create our own module, and we implement one hook, the hook services resources. Now, because we're using SOAP, we also have to hook in our SOAP server module to update our WSDL. Maybe this module can be a little bit updated, and then this wouldn't be needed also, but at the moment it is needed to implement this. The final part is about communicating from Drupal to our SAP backend. Our SAP, and we use OData for it. These are for lightweight requests where we are going to get, for example, all service orders, all service requests of the current logged in user in SAP and stuff like that. OData. It's a set of best practices for building and consuming RESTful APIs. So it's a structured way and a standardized way to query RESTful services. And because it's standardized, we can use a simple Drupal module to integrate it without any custom code. Let's again show you what I mean. So at the top, we have our home, and we have also our product. And when I click on product, we get this. And these lines here are not nodes that are in the system. So everything you see here is loaded real time. You can of course cache it and improve it, but for this demo purposes it's just real time that we are getting it. And we can sort them over OData. So every time I do this, it's sorted like this. We can use the pager functionality from views as well. And this all is just done by creating a view. So you see, it's pretty easy. Do we want to add another OData service and another? We want to contact our OData service for another collection. We can do this. Very simple. We have to add another OData endpoint. This is the URL that contains all metadata actually. And we're going to have customers like this. And now our module just parses everything that's in the metadata and it filters out every collection that's available. So we're going to take the one with all customers and finish. Now we have a way to contact this endpoint. So when I go to my views, I add a new view. You see a customer, a typo, of course. Going to leave this table. You can already see the customers in the system. Now I can add fields to it, all fields that are available for the customer. You can see here. So I randomly pick two. I'm not going to change anything, but you can do everything a normal view can do. So you can also add the sorting functionality, and you can add filters on these fields as well. One thing that isn't working is the relationships. So you can't do a join on two tables or something like that. That's not possible right now. But if someone could implement it, it could be a nice functionality to add. This. And when I go to my page now, I see the result. And of course I forgot my... And we see the result. I showed you already how we configured it. The implementation was with one module, the OData module. It is limited what you can do with it. You can do everything with views with it. But if your application if it suits your needs, then you could do a lot of work with it without ever having to code anything for it. So that's what makes it powerful. But of course, for complex calls to this OData service, we did have to provide a custom OData client to do the calls. So now we integrated these three systems and everything is running. So I guess our job is done and we have delivered the project. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions? Yes?
In the beginning you told us that it was difficult to set up the SAML. What part was difficult in that?
Figuring out which certificates are used in which way.
Structural things.
Yes, indeed. That was the important part actually in that. But when you know how to do it and you just go through it, it's also because we Drupal developers aren't really experienced most of the time with Active Directory. It's a completely different ecosystem.
Yeah. And another question I also had was this open data. Does it deliver entities or is it only used for views?
The contributed module, you mean?
Yeah.
You can only use it for views at this time. I know it's being on the Drupal.org page of the module.
Yeah.
It says that it's being reworked, but it's being reworked for 2 years now, and nothing is happening right now.
Because our architectural snapshot is based on we need to work Drupal, we need to use Drupal as a front end, and everything that is available as a service, we need to consume it.
Yes.
Not replicate the data, but read it directly.
Yeah.
But I think I need to take a look at this OData and maybe try to improve that part, because we already implemented solutions like this on rendering of the...
Yeah, I think it's really powerful the way that it integrates with views. Because indeed, and of course you have to do some caching, because otherwise you're just constantly triggering your service, and you don't want that. But if someone could get the maintenance of this module and improve it a little bit, I think you can do even much more with it.
It's not that you're a co-maintainer or something?
No, I'm not a co-maintainer.
Then you can help us get me on co-maintainer.
Yeah. But I think this kind of things, especially the OData part, it doesn't happen that much in Drupal projects, and that's why it's not that much used, the module, and it's not that well maintained at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks.